Okay. Hello and welcome to Social Media Business. I'm just going to check this one because we had some problems with the other session. So let me just load this up. You might hear a duplicate of what I'm saying. And I think we're live. Okay. Yes, we are. Okay, good. All right. I'll just send this new link out to people because the old link didn't work. No idea why. One of those mysteries. I've not done anything different this time. And I'll just edit this. Waiting for Dave to join me. Let's say new link. Yeah. And we'll also tweet out this link as well. Correct link for live Q&A. With an early edition. Who's Dave Early? And we're good. Okay, so my apologies for that. The nature of the beast. And we're just trying to get sorted with some kind of new, I guess we're trying to figure out a format of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. If you have any ideas about how you'd like to see a show like this progress and what sort of formats and segments that you'd like to see on here, please let us know. I was thinking tutorials or maybe some live stuff, how to do things, some news, maybe disasters. We all love a disaster story, particularly in social media, so that would be a good thing to do. And I'm just checking if people can see this. So the new link's gone out. Hi, Dave.
Hello. We're back.
And I'm just going to check and see if anybody, if people can see this okay. So, okay. It's saying live on my screen, so I think it is live. All right, so let's get going. Just a moment. Can you see it? That's my technical backup. All right, good. All right, well, should we edit this stuff out or should we just leave it in? I'm kind of a bit of a believer in a warts and all sort of podcast, including me screaming out.
All
you
natural.
reckon leave it in? All natural, yeah, exactly. And there's something manufactured about TV shows that really is really obvious today when you see, you know, the kind of stuff. I know that people say it's, you know, crappy podcasts and they're poor quality and stuff, but I like it. I like all the podcasts I see, and, you know, maybe they jabber on a bit too much and they don't have enough structure and discipline, but at least all the, you know, women aren't made up to look like supermodels. Well, I'm not. And you don't look like you've got much makeup on, Dave. Okay, so really quickly, who are you, Dave? What do you do? What are you passionate about?
All right. I'm Dave Early. I am in Brisbane, Australia. I'm a journalist by trade, but I work in online and social media and everything digital. I'm passionate about news and digital distribution of news, I guess. And so I've been in online communities for, 15 or 20 years. and been involved specifically in news as a journalist and in online for probably 10 years now. And that's what I'm passionate about and what I do. So I'm engagement editor is my title at the Courier Mail in Brisbane, the Courier Mail newspaper. And essentially that is engaging audiences across digital and attracting new audiences to the news that don't otherwise see our stuff. So that's what I do and who I am. Yeah.
Okay, good. And what news stories have caught your eye in maybe the last week or so, particularly anything that has a social media angle? I know media and social media kind of all get mixed up at the moment, but anything that's been particularly interesting to you?
I guess the main sort of social media intersecting with news, there is a lot of news. There's a lot of social media getting into the news anyway, because various outlets find things on Facebook or Twitter or Reddit and do them up as, you know, this is something that is popular somewhere else. But
isn't that the nature of news, though, is to take stories from the community and then redistribute it to the wider community? So in a sense, it's just listening into what the village is talking about and turning it into the stories. Yeah. Yeah,
it is essentially. Some people disagree with it as not a way to get news, but it's sort of the same arguments that have that, you know, I've had with news people in defense of things like Twitter before. It's not. Social media isn't out on its own. It's just another form of community and communication, and you have conversations there the same as you do offline. And so news, in the same sense, is equally relevant on social media as if it was happening somewhere else. It's you find things that are popular or interesting to a community and are growing or gaining interest there, and you can broadcast that to a wider audience. And that's what mass media has always done, is broadcast stories to a wider audience who may not have already heard about them.
You take news from one part of the community that knows the story and is part of the story, and then redistribute it to the part of the community that doesn't have it. I think the challenge probably with social media today is that we can go to the original source and look at their Facebook page and their Twitter account and see what's been going on. And then the question for me becomes, is it right to then take that material and put it behind a paywall? That's a whole different argument. And that's one that I think will be an ongoing debate for quite some time. You know, what is the value add? And I don't want to be rude, but there are some publications and some journalists that offer a really good value add and definitely have a monetization model around, you know, wanting to read their stuff. And then there are others that simply seem to create Storyfy style, you know, this was a tweet and then this was the tweeted response and this was another tweet, and you feel like saying, well, why did I just pay for that? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I mean, there's lots of different arguments and points of view that we're not going to necessarily change or be able to change, and that's you know, that is those are decisions made at levels you know, far beyond some of us. You know, in a perfect world, it would be nice if that stuff wasn't behind a paywall, but only the sort of exclusive, produced, quality stuff was behind a paywall. But that's not where things are at with certain news groups, and that includes Fairfax and News Corp, who both have variations of a metered paywall, not a hard paywall necessarily. But then in the other sense, people, the wider audience who are consuming that on a news website, haven't necessarily been exposed to that. So in a sense, someone is aggregating and helping them bring it together, rather than them having to go find it or not know where to go to see that stuff that is available on Twitter or on Facebook. But it's bringing together to an audience that might not even be on Twitter or Facebook as well. But just a minute.
Sure. I think there's... Okay. Hey, come back! Ah. He's back. One of the challenges is that differentiation between original source material and where do we go to get the original source material, and who's doing a good job of curating original stories and then forwarding them on, and then the distribution model, which is, I might go out and find 10 stories about social media and then just simply reshare them, retweet them, maybe with some sort of discussion around it, like I think this is interesting, I think this is great, I think this is terrible. And I don't know that I would charge people for the non-original source material. Personally, as a blogger, as an industry person, as somebody who writes and presents and runs courses, I wouldn't charge people for stuff if I was taking other people's content. But that's just, my model is I am an original source person. My stories come out of what I do. If you are collecting, curating and reporting, can you charge? And you can, because there are people who, we're in the attention economy, we're in the time economy. I don't have time to go and source 500 articles on what's going on in my industry. I just want to go to, like, I don't know, Mashable or someone and go, what's been going on overnight, what's been happening. So there's definitely a model there for, and I don't think it's laziness. It's just that we're looking for curators. We're looking for people who are key influencers that can tell us, let me present to you the things you need to see today.
Yeah.
I do need to have a bit of a dig, though. I'm really sick of disaster porn and death porn and the kind of negativity that comes out of traditional media. And it's not just about social media and the way that they report social media as being full of predators and stalkers and time wasters and, selfish, narcissistic selfies. And, can we have a positive story just once a week? Just,
Well, it's funny. News generally has often been about disaster. I mean, there's various news values, and disaster or negativity is certainly one of them, because it's something that's out of the ordinary. And we can get a range of responses that I see much more often than the traditional newspaper people do, because I'm on social media and can see immediate responses and reactions to various news or entertainment or sport items that are put through. And
are you saying if it bleeds, it leads is not just a mantra? It actually works. It's the thing that gains attention.
Not necessarily, but it is. I mean, there's truth in that. I mean, not at that sort of base level, but in terms of newsworthiness, and you'll see it when on social media that people will complain about a entertainment or sports story that's not hard news enough for them, but then when you post a hard news story, other people complain that there's too much negative news, and they want the nice news. They want the good news stories. So
and isn't it true though?
It's always a hard balance in mass media, because there's so many different tastes in news, and everyone's different values in what they see as important to their community, to what they expect to see reflected in the news coverage.
We have or I have a saying which is the community unites on purpose but divides on values. So the minute you get a group of people together, they're all coming together to discuss something, but then they immediately divide on what should happen and how it should be said and how it should be done. Like we can argue over anything if if we put our mind to it, whether it's sport or politics or climate or refugees or what it is. Everybody comes together to discuss that and then immediately falls apart on what should happen next. The challenge, I think, with mass media is that word mass, because in community management we're really clear to separate our groups out into tribes, in marketing terms into marketing segments. So if you do it correctly and appropriately, you don't get as much trolling, you don't get as much negativity and arguing, because everybody's on the same page. They're all the right market segment who's looking for that kind of information and wants to connect. And the problem I think you have with mass media is I'm quite happy to go on a newspaper site and complain that there's way too much sport. In fact, one article about sport would be too much sport for me. So, that's the problem with mass media, is that, you got so many tribes.
But obviously, there's a whole community of dedicated sport people who want that as well. And so you can have, and that's where everything starts breaking down into niche distribution, that you see communities growing big and influential in sport news or outlets purely on digital, because they cater to that niche, that demographic. So, and I mean, you can argue that's part of the whole, collapsing of the news industry model, is that mass is not necessarily continuing to fulfill the needs of those niche communities, because it's not as full and detailed as the fanatics would like, but it needs to be general enough for the people who don't know everything about that topic can still consume it and understand it.
Okay. We've got a comment here from Gary. He says, surely if it bleeds, it leads is a general human interest, and all communities, broadcast or social media, will respond to it. Which really reiterates what you're saying, is that they can be the most popular stories, and they tend to be the mass story, an earthquake or tsunami or a shooting. I do think that news and media has a role which is not clearly understood by people outside of media, maybe I'm wrong, and that is that they're almost the guardians of the moral ethics of the community. And, one thing I was really aware of when I lived in Singapore is the fact that they would put up a photo, name and shame a person who lived in a high-rise building that had dropped things off of balconies, which sounds like a small thing, but if you've been to Singapore, it's all high-rise buildings and it's a huge crime there. They not only remove the person from the building, they actually remove the whole family, and quite often it's 3 or 4 generations in one family living in a high-rise. They move them down towards the ground floor. They're no longer allowed to live in high-rise buildings, but they definitely have this thing in the newspaper of naming and shaming. And it's the first time that I kind of woke up and went, news are the moral guardians of the community. They keep us in check. They stop us from getting a gun and walking into the neighbour's house or walking into the supermarket, because they continually reiterate how horrible this is and how you'll be, it's, for a momentary gratification. That comes out wrong. I don't think it would be gratifying, although there are a few instances where I would like to get a gun. But that momentary gratification will lead to a lifetime of being in exile, and maybe that's a role of newspapers that is, and does social do this as well? Does social media act as the moral guardians of what is appropriate and relevant and good behaviour today versus tomorrow?
I think it could, but and not to say that it can't, because mass media does. I'm not saying that at all. I think social media could, but at the same time, you've got you do have all the people on social media who might be described as trolls may not intentionally.
Who don't share the value systems of the community. Yeah.
Exactly. And they may not intentionally be, there are people who are intentionally, that is their purpose, is to be a troll, but there are other people who may just disagree with that value system and not
violently, yes,
and not be out and not be making it their purpose to change that. So I think in terms of the value system, social media certainly brings communities together and can certainly grow community and community interaction immensely, as long as that community remains, I think, self-policed and committed to the values that they sort of represent, or say they represent. I mean, it's hard to describe, really. I mean, I think a lot of people would also disagree violently that media are the moral guardians. Some people would disagree wholeheartedly that any media could be described, or some media could be described.
And a few of our shock jock radio hosts come to mind as being more on the side of the trolls than the moral guardians, and that trolling behaviour.
Even though that's what they would claim, that they are being the moral guardians and telling people what is right and correct. But I agree with you.
Have you listened to their shows? They absolutely get their knickers in a knot and try to get I don't know how genuine it is, but they genuinely try to get the community divided around a value proposition. And this is the difference between talkback radio and mass media, I think, is that in a sense the articles are often positioned as you'll be shocked by this, or how outrageous is this, or and sometimes the way the story is presented today is not how the story would have been presented 30 years ago. So a woman who's forced to go to work to look after her children today is a terrible story, poor woman. 30 years ago it would be, how outrageous, how dare she, so there's definitely changes in the value propositions of the stories. And I think the point you bring up, and we call it trolling when somebody doesn't agree with us quite often, particularly if they violently disagree or use words that we wouldn't use except behind closed doors. One of the things there is that it's forcing us to debate these value propositions which have normally been broadcast at us. So whether you're watching Neighbours or reading the newspaper or watching one of the evening current affairs shows, you're kind of told almost how to feel about this, and now we're debating it. And I don't know that that's a bad thing. Don't know.
Oh no, it's definitely not a bad thing. It's a great thing. And in terms of, and it's not that citizen media, as or citizen journalism, however correct or incorrect that descriptor might be, still may not be able to bring us the some of that news that informs the debate, including things like court reporting and reporting of crimes and politics and things like that. I don't think that can be done by citizen journalism, because by technicality they have jobs, and unless that is their job, then they are being a journalist in reporting those things, in doing court reporting and politics and things like that.
But we know that news services overseas are now employing local specialist original source bloggers to cover things. So local beat reporters are being replaced with local beat bloggers, and I'm wondering whether one of the things that I was thinking of is that the coroner's court should have be an original source for putting out the plain facts, because sometimes you feel like going, who's that?
Sorry. No. You say hello. Okay, off you go. Quick. I'll see you soon.
Who's that, Dave?
That is my 3-year-old son. Okay, back upstairs.
Does he have anything to say about media versus social media?
No, no, none.
Not
No,
yet.
not yet.
Okay.
His sister thinks might be a mummy journalist. Um,
Oh.
yeah. Uh, but I'll have to call it off pretty soon anyway. For me, if you want to
Okay.
continue. Um,
I just wanted to ask you about Storyful, and if you could just
oh yes.
explain to me and the audience about Storyful and their relationship with Facebook. Shall I bring
Yep.
up their website? Would you like me to do that? And I can screen share to that one if you like.
Yep.
Just while you're talking about it.
So Storyful have been around for a little while. They basically what they do is verify social content, newsworthy content. So it was, I guess, seen as an opportunity to where a lot of stuff flies around on social media that might not be necessarily accurate or source material. They find and verify source material all over the world. They also I'm not sure if it's just for video, but they also help with licensing. So you'll see if they link to a YouTube video, the description on that YouTube video, they have basically helped that person to license that video. So if news media do want to use it, then they contact Storyful to work out the licensing.
Oh, okay. So almost like Getty for images, this is Storyful for the original source content stories.
Yeah, and source material. They also find and verify source material and images across social media. So Twitter, Facebook, everything. And they were purchased. I'm trying to remember if it was end of last year or January or February this year. News Corp in the States actually purchased Storyful, so they are now part of News Corp. And what they announced a week or possibly a little bit more than a week ago is a relationship, a partnership with Facebook. So now Facebook has a page called Facebook Newswire, which is aimed at journalists, and Storyful is powering it. Storyful is where all the content is coming from. So they're essentially finding viral or newsworthy content across Facebook and verifying that it is direct. It's FB Newswire.
Yeah,
Yep.
FB Newswire. Oh, sorry, I've got the graph up. There we go. So powered by Storyful.
So it is essentially, it can be celebrities, which I think that first one there was, but it can also be just individuals. So there's a recent one from the last day or two where it's just a viral video of, it could end up being a viral video of just someone who videoed some ducks crossing, a family of ducks crossing something.
How is this different from, say, BuzzFeed or Upworthy or some of the others that go out and curate content?
It's not just viral content. It's also just newsworthy content. So, so that top one there is an entertainment one, but they also find disaster or other content to verify and share. So essentially, and what they're doing is they are sharing the source material and saying this is where it comes from. And as with any public post on Facebook, it can all be embedded. So
yeah, of course. Well, what's interesting to me here is they're almost doing a curation service. So one of the courses or one of the things that I teach at the university and elsewhere is how to set up a social media dashboard to bring in all the original source, Facebook pages and Twitter feeds and blogs and websites, so that you can see what stories they're covering and when they're covering them. And it seems to me that maybe that's what they're doing, is they're doing almost a curation service or something. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, essentially, yes. They are, and they're only going to put a certain amount of content on there. They're not going to flood it. Obviously, there's mountains of public Facebook content they could put up, but
they could niche it down, couldn't they? They could have all the sports ones, and
they could if they wanted to. But it's certainly aimed at general news, and they've made no they've made no secret of that this is specifically aimed at journalists and newsrooms to be able to access. I mean, obviously anyone can, but it's there as basically here is some content from something that is either big or newsworthy around the world that you may be interested in using.
Yeah, I've always had that challenge between reporting on things that everybody's talking about and kind of going, oh, everybody's talking about it and everybody's covering it, versus, oh, here's a really interesting small story that could become big or could have a deeper significance. Do you know what I'm saying? It's almost like I think, the black milk clothing fiasco on their Facebook page is interesting, and I was going to blog about it, and then I thought, no, because even though I think I've got sort of some other ideas that people maybe would like to hear about, but maybe why they're right in some ways and wrong in others, it's been done to death, Yeah. Do you really need another opinion, even if it's a slightly different opinion on top of everybody else? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, and it's been done to death within a day. So, you're either on top of it within a couple of hours, or it's old news. And it's not necessarily old news. It depends, who the audience is. Your audience or my audience might be completely aware of all the angles, whereas the mass media audience might not even know about it yet because they're not on social media frequently. They haven't seen it shared on Facebook or something like that. So, it might be the first that they hear about it when it's, put forward or shared by a major media outlet or something like that.
Yeah, sometimes the tail wags the dog. Something that shouldn't have been a big story becomes a big, or maybe could have or could not have, becomes a big story because of the people who pay attention to it. Yeah. And then other times it's grassroots. Everybody's talking about it on social media, on Reddit, and the next thing you know, it's being put up on all the news outlets as well. Yeah. And one of the things I do like about Storyfy is that it does seem to link back to and connect with the source, because there's nothing more annoying than going, I just read that somewhere else, and now you guys are reporting on it and not linking back to the original site. It's interesting. Yes. All right, good. There's a question from Sharon about how not-for-profits can connect with businesses and organisations and then see who their key influencers are as well. I just need to ask you, Dave, do you need to run or do you want to stick around for this part?
I do need to run.
It's okay. What I'll do is I'll answer the question. Yeah. And thanks for taking the time popping in. I'm sorry we had some technical issues this morning. I actually have written up my notes now on how to do it properly. I'm going to say technical issues, but it was actually user error. So I've fixed that now, and it won't happen. I'm going to do this next Thursday as well, and you're very welcome to join us each Thursday or every second Thursday or whenever you like. But if anybody's listening does want to join in next Thursday at 10 o'clock, and I'm looking for more people. We're looking for more people to join in the hot seat. So if you do want to join, let us know. And anything else, Dave? Do you want to add anything else?
I think that's probably good for today. Yeah. Yeah,
very interesting discussion. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Look forward to next time.
Yep. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Right, yeah, everyone. Thanks.
I like having somebody else on here with me, so maybe next time we'll have a few more people in. Sharon, I've noticed your question a few times, but I knew that we only had about 20 minutes with Dave. I wanted to cover off the media section at the beginning. So now we're moving into social media question and answer. And the question from Sharon Sedekase, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is I'm interested in how to use social media to look at who business and organizations and people are networking with. I work for a not-for-profit, and this type of monitoring offline takes resources and time we don't have. So this is an interesting one for me because in the terms of, let me just bring up a diagram that I use, and I'll share it to the screen when I've got it up here. In terms of monitoring of social media, come up. And I'll just come over here and screencast to that one. Often with organizations, they're simply monitoring their own circles of influence. So they get Hootsuite or TweetDeck or something, and they put up their own Twitter account and their own Facebook page and their own blog, and they're just monitoring the discussions that are happening in their own area, which is here. Once you move into looking at social networking and understanding that this is broadcast media, if you like, broadcast distribution of social objects, down here, social is very different because you rely on other people picking up the information and sharing it, retweeting it, and passing it on. So the way that I would interpret the question is, how do we build a monitoring dashboard to really check and see what the communities of interest are and how to monitor who they're talking to, what they're talking about, beyond just, are they responding to our tweets, are they responding to our Facebook status updates, and are they responding to our blog? And there's a few different things that you can do. What I'll do in the next session, I think, is actually run about 15 minutes on building a social media dashboard, and we'll do a live demonstration on how to build the dashboard. But the sort of things that I like to connect with and the sort of things that I am interested in, I'll just come back down here to the question again, is to look at who business organizations and peoples are networking with. So the first thing to do is to find somebody in your industry. I'll go to the Sydney Festival. I know it's not exactly a not-for-profit, but it's definitely an interesting group. When I'm on their page and I go to more, I look at the lists. There's two kinds of lists. And the first ones are the list that the Sydney Festival either create themselves or the list that they subscribe to. And I'll just make this font a little bit bigger. I want to make sure you guys can see it. And if I was, in the arts industry, I can click on the 2014 Sydney Festival artists and see a list of 113 artists that the Sydney Festival connects with. And down here I can see 185 festivals. And so what I would say to you is, if you're a not-for-profit, have a look at the lists in your areas, because something that Sydney Festival can do is click on this list and then see all the news. Here's a tweet from the Auckland Arts Festival, here's one from the Melbourne Festival, Bonnaroo, different festivals, I don't even know what half of these are. Scan through, and if you see something that's interesting and relevant for your community, for your tribe, for instance, the Melbourne Comedy Fest have put this up. It's flickering around. I have this problem sometimes on this screen. I come down here, I would click retweet, and then it would send that on to my readers. So I don't have to always be creating my own tweets. I can monitor networks and forward things on. So when you find somebody in your industry, it could be a competitor, it could be an industry leader, a key influencer, go to their list, click on list members, and start to scroll through and see who your key influencer thinks is influential. So I think that's one way that I would start to build out networks, try and really understand, yes, the Sydney Festival are here, but then these are all the other festivals that they connect with and reshare, and they're resharing each other's stuff. If they don't have a list, and some, organizations don't create lists, let's go back to the list page again. When you see member of, these are lists they don't have control over. So these are the lists that they've been made a member of. Sculpture at Hillview have put the Sydney Festival on the art group list. And what else do we have here? Interesting people, art and design. So, you can find lists that way. The same thing happens on most social media sites. Unfortunately, with Facebook, although I've created about 20 lists, it's kind of annoying because I have to keep publicizing the lists for people to see my list. So I've created a list of about 200 news media sites and put them on a list called News Media. And on Facebook, I have to continually link people to them because you can't go to my account and then just click on the list that you want to see, the social media list, the news media list, executives, Australian companies, whatever. On LinkedIn, most people are pretty good at sorting through, who's talking to whom. So Twitter, it's lists. I also look at who they reshare, the @ symbol, who are they chatting about and connecting with. And I try to bring these lists into different monitoring services. Now, next week I'll show you full-on monitoring services, but this is a very clever little one called Paperly. And on Paperly, once you've logged in, we'll just use Twitter to log in. And I create a newspaper, remind me later, by going to my menu, and I have here all my newspapers. So I've got a newspaper here called the Australian Executive Daily. I've found CEOs that are on Twitter. And I'll just show you this one. I've created this. It's called the Australian Executive Daily, and it just takes the tweets from business newspapers and CEOs that are on Twitter. So Christopher Joyce and a couple of news journalists as well. When they tweet out a link, it automatically creates the newspaper, and so it's a quick and easy way for me to see what they're sharing, who they're connecting with. So in social media, there's kind of 2 or 3 things you want to find out. What are the social objects that are important to your network? Who are the people that curate and pass on the information? Who are their key influencers? And the lists show you that. And probably the last thing is, how the channel itself accepts that. So how do the people connecting with the material, do they share it? Do they put people back on lists? Are they, it's like a virtual circle or virtual cycle. On Paperly, I've got a lot of newspapers that I've created so I can check them each day. I've got all the universities, about 85 universities are on my Uni Daily newspaper, and I've got a not-for-profit social media one. And this is one where I've collected a list together of a whole lot of not-for-profits, put them on a list on Twitter, and then what Paperly does is it looks at the list, looks at the tweets, looks at the links that they're tweeting about, and then runs off and gets the news and pulls it back and creates the newspaper from there. So I guess in a really quick and easy, simple way, that's how I look at who are the key influencers for a particular industry. I would then, after I've been monitoring for a while and got to understand which ones are being shared the most. Paperly is pretty good at putting the most popular articles at the top and which ones got the most retweets. Once I've done that, I monitor them in my monitoring panel, and then I run them through peer index, leaderboard, clout, some sort of a service which is looking at not only how many followers they have, but who shares their stuff. If Barack Obama shares something of yours on Twitter, then your clout rating will jump, to 100, even if you've only got 10 followers. And by the same token, if you've got 200,000 connections, but none of them reply, reshare, or connect with you, then your clout rating drops. That's clout with a K. So there's a few different things that I would do in order to unravel networks. So hopefully that's got you on the right track there. There's a couple of questions here about I think we've covered the media questions for today. Maybe we can put them on next time, on the next Thursday at 10 o'clock. And it is 11:30, so I need to finish up now. I just want to quickly check Twitter and see if anybody's directly connected there with a question. And we did have one from last week, and it was about connecting online. I think it was around with people that you don't know, and sort of how do you get out of just the 100 people that follow you on Twitter, or maybe you've got 300 people connecting with you on Facebook. The biggest way to do this, or the best way to do it, is, its technical term is blogger outreach or social media outreach, but the simple thing is really to find communities of interest, and that's where the hashtag comes in. Hashtags represent communities that are coming together to talk on a particular topic, but they may not necessarily follow you or connect with you. In Facebook, it's hashtags and groups. On Twitter, it's purely hashtags. The group, in a sense, connects around the hashtag. And on Google+, it could be a community or group, but it can sometimes just be a hashtag as well. So if you were passionate about science fiction, if you use the hashtag, I don't know, hash Star Trek, hash Doctor Who, you would then be connecting not only to the people who follow you and connect with you, but to the broader community of people who are interested in sci-fi TV shows. If you put up, I've just, I don't think XYZ in Australian media is going Australian politics is going very well. If you hash Ozpol that, you'll connect with the people who follow hash Ozpol, and we know that there are 12 million tweets, retweets during 12 hours during hot topics. So you can get outside of the 200 or 300 people that connect with you on Twitter and take it into the larger group. On Google Plus, for instance, I will hashtag this with hash social media so that the 65,000 people that follow me will get notified if they're online, etc., that this is available. But then I'll also reach a broader community of people who are interested in social media. In fact, if you know of another hashtag that this video should include, let me know, because I collect hashtags. To me, collecting hashtags is like collecting communities of interest. So that was a question left over from last week about how to connect with people that, I guess it's, you're over here and you want to connect with the big community. Sorry, let me just screen share that you couldn't see it. You're over here and you want to connect with the large community that's over here. So this would be, for me, a tweet that goes out or a status update on Facebook or Google Plus that goes out without a hashtag talks into the closed community. If you do use hashtags, it drops or seeds your content into the other communities of interest as well. Just remember, some of those communities are transitory and aren't around every day, others are permanent communities and you can pretty well connect with them anytime. And if you're going to connect with a Facebook group or Google Plus community, then you need to link to that community so they know about the material. Otherwise, just use the hashtag for people who are searching, connecting with that. Okay, thank you for your time today, and we'll be back at 10 o'clock again next Thursday. Again, if you've got any questions, leave them for me on Twitter. I'm Silk Charm. On Google Plus, I'm Plus Laurel Papworth. And on Facebook, probably the best place is the student page, which is facebook.com/silkcharm, or you can leave them in the comments here on YouTube or on the event, and we'll cover them again next week. And I must make a note to do a demonstration of quickly building a social media dashboard, because I think that would be interesting. Thank you, and see you again then. Have a good day.